With the realisation on Saturday night that the gap between the worst and the second worst team in the competition was 8 goals, I thought it would be interesting to actually look at West Coast with some optimism in terms of what they can do at the end of the year to accelerate their growth. And with Ryan Daniels' report that Harley Reid's management has put deals and things to West Coast in order for him to stay, and it's looking more likely that he is, that's already a great starting point. But they could be doing a lot more, and I think rather easily as well, in order to get themselves on the right path. I'm not suggesting the Eagles are going to become contenders overnight, but there is a way that they can hopefully put some really bad decisions behind them and continue forward in a positive way. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So make sure you drop a like if you like the video, subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. Let's get into it. So I apologize for doing this to you so early, Eagles fans, because you'll know this already. But they went 10-12 in 21. And since then, it has been grim, as you can see on the screen, which of course equates to 11 wins and 75 losses. Wowza. Now, when it comes down to the mistakes that have been made up to this point, of course, there are 3 things that stand out. Most people are going to point to the Tim Kelly trade as one of them. I can kind of understand why, obviously, because that hasn't exactly worked out. The second thing is that West Coast didn't cash in on the value of some of their older players the way that Richmond did, circa Baker, Bolton, Graham, etc. Rioli as well. I know Graham was a free agent. I should have said Rioli, but I've said it now. We can move on. So that's the second thing that they did wrong. And then the third thing were some drafting decisions that didn't exactly go well. So let's look at fixing those things. Now, we can't fix, obviously, the Tim Kelly trade. That's done and dusted. I don't know why he got the extension, but is it the worst thing in the world to have some experience? Not really. Depends where he's going to be on your depth chart. Mostly waffle? Fine. Is what it is, right? I don't know what he's getting paid. Ultimately, I don't think West Coast salary cap is going to be overflowing with coin. So as long as he still isn't your number 2 midfielder moving forward, I actually don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. But let's circle all the way back to the 21 draft, where they actually had a really good hit in this draft, and that was Brady Hough at pick 31. Now, Campbell Chesser at 14, not great. Rhett Bazzo at 37 is still a work in progress. Jack Williams is still a work in progress at 57, and I don't actually know if Greg Clark is still on their list or not. Now, the reason why, and I don't want to do this aggressively towards Campbell Chesser here, but when you talk about draft misses, you're not necessarily looking at the style of player that you have drafted, but who did you not take is almost as important. Now, what kind of frustrates me, especially around, say, like the 20 draft, for example, is that people that go, how did an Errol Goulden get to 32 when such and such picked this player at pick like 9, for example, right? That's a 23 pick gap, and also Errol was an academy player, which is not the greatest example, but that kind of shits me. It needs to be players taken around that mark, right? That's just the way it goes. But all 6 players taken after Campbell Chesser in the first round of that 21 draft, and Matty Johnson is the first pick of the second round, not too shabby either, just quietly, have all gone past him in a pretty significant way, unfortunately. You're looking at Lee Collier, Darcy Wilmot, Tom Brown, Angus Sheldrick, Jacob Van Rooyen, and Kai Lohman. Yeesh, not great. Now, as much as we like to talk about the teams that hit on late round draft picks and all that, you've still got to be able to hit your early ones as well. You're not going to hit all of them. I understand that. An unfortunate miss in a pretty underrated draft. We move from there into 22. You're looking at Jinby and Hewitt. Now, I'm a big fan of Elijah Hewitt. Ruben Jinby, I don't mind either. Barnett and Kobe Burgell are obviously your 2 misses there. Noah Long, I like. Isaiah Winder and Zane True haven't really worked out, but they're rookie picks. You can forgive that. But of course, 22 is going to be known as that trade where they got out pick 2, Willie Rioli, and pick 40. For pick 9, 14, a second and a third, which, by the way, even without knowing what happened with those picks, they got fleeced, which unfortunately is not the first time that this has happened. But, yeah, not great. Now, Eagles fans, sorry to do this to you. Who could they have got? Harry Sheezel. That's who North took with that pick. But in terms of the Barnett and Burgell picks, even though they weren't, massive hits, and this kind of comes into the cashing in on the experience because a couple of their players may have gotten them a second-round pick a few years ago, there are a lot of players in that 20 to 32 mark that just didn't go well. Charlie Clark, Lewis Hayes, Braden George, Cooper Vickery, Jacob Ryan, James Van Ness, and Hugh Davies. If they were on West Coast's list that I gave you before instead of Barnett and Burgell, does that change a whole lot? To be honest, not really. As much as a couple of those players can still become very good players, as we sit here right now, if any of those names were added there, you'd probably be saying the same thing. Although, out of all the players on that list, I think Lewis Hayes, fully fit, of course, would be getting games at West Coast. And then the start of the good stuff. Harley and Archer Reed alongside Clay Hall in terms of their draft picks in 23. And then you got Ryan Marich in the mid-season draft, who I have called West Coast's James Sicily. I didn't realize that it was going to be 25 James Sicily because neither of them can kick a fat guy in a street fight right now, which is unfortunate, but hopefully some confidence can come into Ryan's game. But the two Reeds tick across the board, and Clay Hall's a pretty handy player as well. And especially around, again, in between that Harley and Archer pick, when you got the guys in the 20s, you're looking at Taylor Goad, Charlie Edwards. Now, Will Dawson I'm a massive fan of, so that may be a little bit of a miss there, if you want to call it that. Harry DiMattia, Oscar Ryan, and Lance Collard. Again, Lance, maybe, but you're not sort of going, we've really missed out there. So again, might not be the biggest deal that they didn't cash in, but again, some of the draft picks haven't quite worked out, which kind of sucks. And then in 24, Bo Allen, Job Shanahan, Tom Gross, Luca Grego, and Hamish Davis. Now, of course, the Bo Allen one is going to be a source of contention because the pick afterwards was Murphy Reed, which would be handy. I don't know what Bo is going to be at this point, but yeah, wowza, my God. But of course, this is where the other pick trade came in. Pick 3, 63-68 for 12, 73, Liam Baker and Matt Owies. So that, obviously that 12 became 16 with the Bo Allen pick, but you're effectively going Allen, Baker, Matty Owies, who's not best 23 at this point. Shout out to Carlton for getting that right. And of course, the pick 3 ended up becoming Jagger Smith, who unfortunately has done his ACL. But considering that the midfield is going to be such a big focus for the Eagles moving forward, Jagger instead would be pretty handy, although Liam Baker is probably going to be their sole captain next year, so you've got to find sort of balance there. You really do. And then I promise you, the last of the negativity before we get to the positive stuff is West Coast's biggest problem, though, are not the kids. I've said this with North Melbourne. I would say it with Melbourne. I will say it with whoever wants to listen, is the rebuilding teams are not relied on the kids' quality to start. It will need to at some point, but not to start. It's your experienced players. You look at Taranto, Hopper, their form for the Tigers, lovely. Broad, Vlosten, these kind of guys. The most experienced players before you get to Liam Baker on West Coast list is Jamie Cripps, Elliot, Liam Duggan, Jeremy McGovern, Jaden Hunt, Dom Sheed, and Tim Kelly. 0 of them would get a gig in a top 4 team. It's as simple as that. There's your problem. And under Andrew MacQualter, they are going to have to lean into the youth because they haven't got that there. They just don't. You can't produce out of thin air quality experience. You've got to make it, which is what his job is. And then in terms of what's coming in the draft, you're looking at a potential for top 25 picks or top 20 open draft, right? They're going to ask for a priority pick, or they might ask for a priority pick. I think that's just going to be the AFL just guaranteeing, no matter what the Oscar Allen contract is, that they're just going to get pick 2. So I'm going to say that they've got pick 1, pick 2, pick 15, pick 19 coming through, 33, and 51. So you start there. You're going to have to give up some points because you've got 4 guys that you are going to be able to nominate or accept bids on, I should say, which is Wes Wally, Kobe Evans, Tyler Williams, and Charlie Banfield. Now, to be honest, I haven't seen a whole lot of Tyler's work. I like Charlie, but Wes Wally's the one. And I do like Kobe Evans as well, by the way. I do not think, I'm not going to bash 18-year-olds at this point, but Wes has got a bit of X-Factor excitement about him, which we absolutely love. And because West Coast aren't really a team that you go, well, they've got to bring people to the footy because of how loyal the fans are, but genuine excitement forward of the ball is a massive tick, and he'll be able to bring that, which is really nice. So considering I don't think they're going to have to give up points for their first 4 picks, you've got that 1, 2, 15, 19, and those 4 blokes coming in, that is 8 list changes. There could be even more, but you're looking at 8 there, at least. Now, in terms of, we've got to look at who is going to go from that list, which is going to be pretty harsh to do, but I got to do it anyway. You're looking at Dom Sheed, Jeremy McGovern, Jack Petrocelli, Jaden Hunt, Oscar Allen in free agency, Tom Cole, Harry Barnett, and Campbell Chesser. Yes, there are 9 names there. Tom Cole's probably the most safe out of all of them. But in terms of likelihood of departing the Eagles, I think that list there is pretty handy. Now, Barnett does have a contract for next year. They do have a lot of ruckmen on their list, and he's just the one that's not really coming along. So it might be in terms of contract termination there, or they might keep him for 1 more year, and Chesser is the guy they have less faith in. I'd probably get rid of Barnett, to be honest, first, but that's just my opinion. But in terms of your most common list changes, they're going to be the ones. Now, of course, this isn't taking into consideration particular trade targets, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, which is going to affect some things. I don't think they're going to be big movers and shakers, to be honest. The Eagles, we'll see how it goes, but I still think there are names to talk about. But, of course, the draft is going to be the way to go. Pick 1 and 2 is going to be the vocal talking point. And for mine, I think Sharp and Dersma are just the answers. I know Cooper Duff Tyler is getting a lot of love, and apparently, according to I think it was ESPN article that I read, that they're really interested in CDT. Pick 1 or 2 on a ruckman where you've got some at your disposal on your list. That's a risk. I'm not saying it's not going to work or anything like that. I genuinely just believe that you could probably target, a ruckman if you really wanted one, either at another club, which they already did with Matt Flynn, who already is not a terrible ruckman, by the way. I don't think you need an auto replacement for him. But you've got some second ruck types that can help out. Archer Reed, when fit, I think will be able to play second ruck moving forward. Jack Williams might be able to as well. So you've got some did his ACL, which is a shame, but his ball use I really like. Jacob Farrow is a guy that is getting a lot more draft love as well. I'm still a big Tommy Burton fan, and I think he could fit West Coast's profile nicely. I really do. But I think in terms of what's coming in is going to be more exciting than the ones going out. Again, the big problem is that the experience of the Eagles has caused them to crash. McQualter's got to get out of that, which I think he can do. I rate him as a coach. And then in terms of how your midfield could look next year, you've got Harley Reid, Dyson Sharp, and Elijah Hewitt. You might be able to get Brady Hoff in there around about. You could also get Willem Dersma in there roundabout if you want to. The advantage that Dersma's got is because he's being used across the ground, he's really versatile, is you won't necessarily have to start him in the middle in order to get games into him. The same thing is like Murphy Reid, for example, was drafted as a midfielder, hasn't played midfielder at Freo at all because he's played forward of the ball. Now, there's a bit of a difference there. Freo have got a stacked midfield. West Coast obviously don't. But it's not as if you need to throw 2 first gamers in Sharp and Dersma into that midfield and go, so long, good luck. I don't think Sharp has got the versatility, so we may have to start around that midfield. Whereas Harley, being a third-year midfielder, is going to be really experienced. But you've got Elijah there. You've got Brady, who could become that guy. Tyler Brockman can rotate through there as well. And I still think they're going to need one experienced mid to fold through there as well. If Yo can get fit, if it's Kelly, which doesn't sound great. In all honesty, I think it should be Liam Baker as a roll-through guy, not necessarily as a full-timer. Not a full-timer. In terms of guys from other clubs that you could potentially look at, now again, if you barrack for a team that has a player on this list, I'm not saying I want them to leave. This is pro-West Coast, not anti-your club. So keep that in mind. But some guys that they could definitely look at, you're looking at guys like Judd McVie, Angus Sheldrick, who I think is unlikely to leave the Swans, Jai Sarong, Sam Frost, if you want some experience down back, Jesse Motlop, Finlay McRae, Neil Erasmus, Mitch Nevitt, Sam Flanders, Dylan Williams, and Jed Busling. Guys that can't get into really good teams are ones that you could look at. Again, are you going to look at all of them? Probably not. Are you going to get all of them? Of course not. That would be ridiculous. But in terms of a small sample size of a list of guys that you could throw some feelers out there for, they may be some names. In terms of guys that I would be throwing, like good coin at, McVie, Sheldrick, and Buslinger are the ones. But Buslinger just signed an extension. He still ain't playing. So I would be getting onto that hard. And then in terms of your experience, you're looking at a guy like Sam Flanders, but I think he's more likely to go to Victoria. I think Melbourne is going to pick him up, to be totally honest with you. But you could probably get, could you get 1 or 2 guys on that list and see how you go? I don't think any of them, outside of the ones that I've already spoken about, so McVie, Sheldrick, Buslinger, kind of off the table here, I don't think any of those other ones are going to cost you draft capital that is going to turn around and bite you in the ass. I really don't. But none of this is worth the conversation we're having without a game plan. And there's actually not too many things that West Coast aren't bottom 4 in, right? But in terms of what they are okay at, they're 6th for rebound 50, 10th for hardball gets, 12th in post clearance contested possession, 13th in meters gained, and 14th in score from turnover. Yeah, that's pretty grim. But in terms of the game plan that I could see them moving forward, I think it's double H. I think it's handball and hunt. Going into next year, they are highly likely again to be a bottom 4 side in terms of age and experience. Young blokes can run. You've got some tools that are going to be able to capitalize on a forward of center kicking game, but I think handballing your way out and trying to get more or as much overlap run as you can is going to suit a young group really well. Because check this out, for example, West Coast are 10th in the competition from going from D50 to forward 50. That's not bad. It's AFL average. but they're 16th or 15th, I should say, at turning that into a score. Defensive pressure acts, they are third, mainly because it's down there so much, but they're 16th in rebound 50 rate. And I think what they are trying to do a little bit too much is cutely kick their way out. And I just don't think it works. I think if you are going to have a guy like Ryan Marich, or you are going to have these halfbacks, Ruben Jimby and all that, I would much rather them bite off a 20-meter ball, get an overlap handball, deliver it another 20, and that's how you're getting your 50 meters down the ground. Of course, part of the 2020 is going to be a 10-meter run, but I think that's the way to go because you're going to have your contested balls in Reed and Sharp in this example. You might be able to go a little bit smaller in the forward line as well because a handball game is going to be just the way to go. Look at Geelong, look at Brisbane, look at Hawthorn. Yes, I know Adelaide are going the three talls, which if they want to do that with Shanahan, Archer Reed, and Jake Waterman, if you want to go that pure tall forward kind of way, you can. But I think Waterman's hybrid ability does lean itself into a small ball kind of forward line. And then your Archer Reed is your get-out guy, and Shanahan, I'm so excited to see what he can do. But overlap run and meters gain territory has got to be the name of the game. You're going to get butchered on turnover, you are, but they're getting butchered on turnover anyway. So I think some youthful exuberance and some run is going to be the way to go. Is it going to be grim for the next couple of years? Potentially. I think when we find out Harley stays, and fingers crossed that comes soon, is going to bring an overwhelming wave of optimism. And West Coast have dug themselves out of the doldrums before. 2001, they were bottom 2 on the ladder. They were in the grand final 4 years later. Early 2010s, they were bottom of the ladder, or pretty close to bottom of the ladder. 2015, they were back in a grand final. So I'm not suggesting that they're going to be in a grand final in 2 years, but this is a club that's proven itself over time that they can bounce back. And I'm backing the coaching to do it as well. And hopefully the youngsters can come with them. So what do you think, guys? Like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to join the Daz Talks Footy family. I hope you enjoyed watching. Round 20 is going to be an absolutely big one and plenty of things to cover on the channel. So stick around. Have a good one. See you in the next video. Goodbye.